Howdy, folks. I'm Brian.
I'm Amber.
And here's some Reddit. Our first letter is titled, Am I a jerk for taking my nephew back to my sister's husband after she left him with me? My sister had a baby 6 months ago, and this morning she brought him to my apartment. It was 10 a.m., and I'm a 19-year-old male, and I was half asleep. She asked me if I could watch him really quick, because she had some stuff to do, and call her if anything happens. He was asleep, so I said okay, but woke up 20 minutes later crying. I gave him his bottle, and he was calm for a bit, but started crying again. I don't know what to do with babies, so I call my sister. She says she's stuck running errands, but she'll try to be there soon. When I asked her if Ted, her husband, could come and get him, she said to leave him alone because he's busy at work. Literally an hour later, he's still screaming his head off. I tried looking up how to calm down a baby, so I rocked him, trying to play on the floor or showing him my phone, but nothing. He wasn't having it. I call my sister 2 more times. First time, she tells me to give him his bottle, which I already did, and she says she'll be back soon. Second time, she tells me to relax, and it's almost done. I called her again 40 minutes later, but this time, it just goes to voicemail. Then, started to smell something bad. It was because my nephews had done his diaper badly. Had pooed in his diaper. I didn't know what to say there.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what to say as I was going through that. Did his diaper badly. Bad diaper. It's a bad diaper, folks. The smell was awful, and I said no, because I didn't have it in me to change a diaper, and nothing I did was making him stop crying. He was red in the face from crying all this time. I texted my sister telling her I was going to take him to their house, but she didn't reply. Ted was confused when I got there. I told him my sister said she had some stuff to do and left him with me, but my nephew wouldn't stop crying. He has a dirty diaper and my sister won't answer me. Guy was so angry. He took my nephew and told me thank you for bringing him back. That was it, and when I got back home, my sister was calling me. She was flipping out and asked why I took the baby back to their house when she told me not to. It's because she told Ted she was taking my nephew to her friend's house to have breakfast so her friend could see him, and now he's mad at her because obviously she didn't do that. My parents told me that they're in the middle of a huge fight and I should have stayed out of it and babysat my nephew. I don't know what's going on. All I know is Ted is not talking to her. My sister called me a couple of times to tell me stuff, and she can't believe I was such a little jerk brother that I couldn't do one simple favor for her when she needed it. Now I'm feeling bad, and I don't know if I should have done it differently. Was I a jerk for taking my nephew back instead of waiting for her to show up? Yeah, so the edit isn't worth reading. You tell them, Amber.
So basically, it's just about leaving a kid alone in a dirty diaper. He just explains it was only 15 minutes, and it makes him sick, the sight of it, the smell of it, and he's not having kids, so he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, well, he didn't really sign up for this, and he was kind of under the impression that this was going to be
a very
15
quick thing.
minutes of him being left with a baby.
I mean, by the end of this, she's left the baby with him for about 2 hours?
Yeah, that seems like pretty close to 2 hours there. So
yeah,
I would be hard pressed to make him the jerk in this situation.
Exactly. Well, and he reached out to his sister, because she said it was going to be fast. It wasn't fast. It kept not being fast. She even shut off her phone. Which I have, some serious questions.
Pretty big qualms about the whole situation here.
There's something definitely not right going on here. Something clearly that she didn't want her husband to find out about.
Yeah, why was she telling her husband one thing and her brother another thing? What kind of errands were these?
Yeah.
Unless she was throwing a surprise party for her husband. This doesn't look good on her.
No, and if it was some kind of thing where her husband was in the wrong or something that she should have let her brother in on what was going on.
Yeah.
I just have to, I don't, of course, know what it was, but, if it was something that, my husband wouldn't want me doing this, and it just, maybe he's controlling or something,
Yeah.
she should have given her brother a heads up.
Yeah.
So my guess is probably more something like cheating. That's pretty much what all the commenters say.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind when I read this. I'm like, oh, she's saying one thing to one person and one thing to another person.
So
she went to a very special friend.
Yes.
They were roommates.
So obviously we don't know the full story there, but it does seem like, it's certainly not her brother's fault for her getting found out in her lies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, who leaves their child with someone who doesn't know how to take care of children in the first place?
They're 6-month-year-old on top of that. Like, this kid is 6 months old. And, like, that's not, leaving a 6-month-old with your brother for 2 hours.
Your brother who does not know how to take care of children.
It seems like a recipe for disaster. Like, I just don't know what was going through her head here. It just seems like this was probably a really bad idea on her part, if you ask me.
So I don't see any way that OP's in the wrong here. Like, again, according to his sister, she was just running errands. And if she had really needed him to take the kid and not ask, not talk to her husband, she needed to give him a reason why, not, oh, well, he's just, working around the house.
Yeah. Well, there's another possibility. She could have gone to her friend's house with the baby and actually, visited. Because it doesn't seem to make much sense to me that she would have, if she was going to cheat, why wouldn't she just, leave the baby at home?
Well, I figured it was to give her a cover story, because how could she go to her affair partner's house if she has a baby with her?
Well, but I mean, what would stop her from going to her affair partner's house with a baby anyways?
Because who wants a baby if they're, around when you're having an affair? So, that was my speculation there, and this is all pure speculation.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is nothing beyond speculation, of course, but to me, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of things here that make a whole lot of sense. Like, her actions, why lie to your brother and be like, oh, hey, why not just be like, hey, I'm throwing Ted a surprise party, I need to do some planning and some errands. I told him that I was going over to a friend's house, but I just need to, pick up some stuff and do some stuff around here. So could you watch the baby for a bit? And then if she has that lie, if that's what it was, then she would at least have been covered in that case too, And then, or she could be like, oh, hey, yeah, I actually dropped my baby off at my brother's house after I got done visiting with my friend, because me and my friend decided that we wanted to go out to lunch or something like that. And we wanted to go to a fancy restaurant where there was a no baby policy. There's any number of things she could have said here. Brian giving all the bad advice on how to have an affair effectively.
Yeah, don't do these things.
Maybe I should stop giving advice.
in this capacity.
Why did you do this? Why did you do this cheating thing so badly? You could have lied so much better. I just need to grab some tea. Today I'm drinking some mint tea.
I have water. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my parents jerks after they shared my former therapy diary with my younger brother? I'm a 20-year-old female, and I have a younger brother who's a 15-year-old male. I was 5 when he was born and had suffered a trauma during the pregnancy. I was alone in the house with my grandpa, who had passed away while my parents were out of town. That made his impending arrival very stressful for me. To be honest, I was angry and sad. I did not want a sibling, and I know the next 3 to 4 years were very rough for my family. I would scream and cry and have night terrors, and when either of my parents showed him any affection, I would lose it. There were times when I would tell them to send him away, times I would think things you should never think about anyone, really, but the fact that he was a baby and I was so young, it was concerning. My parents put me into therapy, and for about a month, I didn't open up. I didn't speak at all. I wouldn't even play with the toys. So the therapist came up with the idea for me to write stuff down. She would let me write, and I would do that. Most of it in the first year, and half of it made no sense, but it helped her a little because she could pick up on some things. There was a lot of heavy stuff in there. Stuff that I hate that I wrote and felt. But I also know from my therapist that it was not my fault, and trauma affects everyone differently. And for me, the change of a sibling as well as the feeling of losing my parents to him were intensified by the trauma I had suffered. And I was incapable of not feeling like he was the cause, or like if he went away, everything would get better. I actually never showed my parents the journals. They knew they existed, but the therapist suggested that they should not read them, but if I ever felt like I wanted to go over the journals with them, I could. I chose not to. They knew some of how I felt, but I never wanted them to hate me for feeling how I did. There were a lot of rough days. My brother never remembered any of it. It turns out my parents actually kept them. I put them in the trash a couple of years ago before moving out as kind of a way of moving on from that, and my parents kept and read them, and not only that, but they decided a few weeks ago that my brother had a right to know. I had no idea about any of this until my brother DM'd me saying I was a lousy person and how could I ever say those things or feel those things and I was sick. I called my parents and they straight up told me they felt he deserved to know and so did they. I told them they were jerks and they should not hold that stuff against me. They called me sick and said what I wrote went far beyond normal sibling rivalry or trauma. They basically said, how dare I call them jerks after that. Now I'm just doubting whether I am being a jerk now. I'm so mad and I feel like I'll never escape from this. Am I the jerk? No.
Can you imagine? I think OP's only mistake here was not burning them instead of throwing them in the trash, but who expects your parents to read the journals? And I'm not, of course, blaming OP.
No, certainly.
I think in this particular case, they didn't have any idea that their parents were going to try to preserve those.
Right, especially if the parents have never pressured them for it or something like that. And it may just be the parents saw them in the trash and got curious, which is not a good reason. Like, if someone throws out their journals, just let it go.
Huge invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
These are, for all intents and purposes, medical history, I would think.
Yeah.
And I think that they violated OP's medical history by basically reading them without their permission.
Yeah. So this is a huge, huge invasion of privacy. Like, when I've been in therapy for my anxiety, and so when I was done with a particular session, my therapist sent me home with, my paperwork, and you totally could read it if you want to. There's nothing in there that I wouldn't share with you, but you haven't felt compelled to pull out my therapy papers and go through them because it's my personal stuff.
Yeah, but I also don't even read over your phone, over your shoulder for your phones and stuff like that.
Well,
I think privacy is a really important thing for people to have, even couples, and that's just it. It's like if you're a parent too, then you should feel respect towards your kids and their privacy, and certainly people are going to have inside thoughts, things that other people shouldn't be privy to. And in the therapist said that if you feel inclined to share some of the details from the journal, you can.
But that she didn't recommend it.
Yeah, but they didn't recommend it. And that's just it. It's like they took this into their own hands in order to basically ridicule OP for how they felt as a kid.
Right.
Of all things. Well, like a kid.
Well, and we all have had horrible thoughts at one time or another. I guarantee, I would be surprised to find someone out there who hasn't had some thought in their head that went through, and then you're like, later on, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that thing. Especially when you're growing up with siblings. Siblings are frustrating and annoying, even without trauma.
Yeah, well, it just sounds like in this case, they had a severe trauma, especially around, the death of their grandparent, and this, having your grandparent die on you while you're staying in their house, I'm sure was traumatic enough.
Yeah, and the association then of the new sibling with the loss of the parent's affection as well as the death, of course, a child, a 5-year-old, is not going to be able to rationally be like, these are completely separate incidents.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes sense that the traumatized mind is just going to be like, he's the cause of everything bad that happened here.
And I think that's what the therapist was saying, is that they associated this death and the loss of the affection from the parents as basically the cause of the sibling. And, that's why they sent them to therapy. Literally, it doesn't sound like OP like enacted these feelings on their brother ever. So why do they care if OP had these feelings at one point in time?
And what do you think the brother is going to get out of hearing this? Like, he has no memory of what happened as a child. He didn't have any awareness, and now he has this horrible vision of his sister because of things she thought when she was a traumatized child. Like, I can't see how the parents could have done this, like, any good that could have come from this. Like, why would you... Why? Like, yeah,
well, on top of that, like, disrespecting OP's wishes and not allowing them just to be thrown out.
Yeah. And then to go above and beyond and, like, share this with the brother, like...
So just so disrespectful. So disrespectful.
Yeah.
All right. Our last letter is titled, Am I a jerk for telling my girlfriend she's not funny enough to do stand-up? My girlfriend is a funny person, but I've never seen her do stand-up type jokes. She says that before we dated, she did stand-up twice and both times killed it, without having anything prepared. I believe her, but she tends to exaggerate things sometimes. We were talking about female stand-up comics, and she told me the whole reason why she hasn't pursued stand-up is that she knows that she'd be too good at it, and that she'd become the best female stand-up and get pigeonholed into stand-up, and it would ruin her life because she was too good at it. Oh, such a ruined life. I was flabbergasted when I realized that she wasn't joking at all. I told her that she's not stand-up funny, and I've never seen her do stand-up jokes, and she was offended that I didn't believe in her. Like, legitimately shocked and upset that I didn't see what she saw. Am I the jerk? She was upset enough where I wonder if I messed up and misspoke.
Yeah, I'm going to say OP's a little bit of the jerk here.
I think they're both kind of jerks here.
Well, no, I don't necessarily think she's being a jerk. I think she has an inflated sense of self, which isn't necessarily the same thing as being a jerk.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, she's certainly not intentionally, I guess, saying these things to kind of like evoke a response out of OP here. And, you know, OP, I think, could have handled this differently by being like, well, I mean, maybe you should try some stand-up just because I'd be interested in seeing if you truly are as funny as what you say in those stories.
Or even just kind of like the nod and smile approach. I mean, my mom is taking a stats class, an education stats class, and is convinced that she is a math genius now. And it's very frustrating, you know, for me to listen to her as someone who has a master's in mathematics and a PhD in physics, like, to talk about how this one class has made her like this math genius. But I bite my tongue because nothing productive is going to come from telling her that she is not a math genius. And the way I kind of see this is, it doesn't sound like OP's partner is trying to do stand-up. Like, she says she's put this out of her mind because she'd be too good. So
that's such a weird thing to say, though.
It is.
Like, could you, like, the fact that she is really sincerely believing that she would be so good at it that she would be pigeonholed into being a stand-up comedian, like, if she is really as good as she thinks she is, that she could actually be like the world's best female stand-up comedian, wouldn't that be like a valuable asset to, you know, make her famous or any number of things?
Not if it's not what she really likes. Like, so, I mean,
like, what is she doing instead? I want to know. Like, is she like a very successful such and such? So I don't know. I have questions when folks make claims like these.
Well, I imagine that she is probably not looking at her talents, you know, accurately. But OP doesn't even have any, like, he's never heard her do stand up, and he's making these judgments with, like, basically sight unseen.
Yeah, well, certainly I think that does make him a bit of a jerk in this situation because, like, he hasn't even seen her do stand-up comedy, and I guess she's only done it twice, but, yeah, if she did stand-up comedy and he realized that she was really good at it, then, I mean, that certainly would be one thing. Or if he saw her do stand-up comedy and was like, Yeah, it's not so good.
Well, and like again, since she's not trying to make a career out of it or even do this as like a hobby, it sounds like it's just she's just like, I could do this thing. Like a lot of people have things they think they could do that they never do.
Yeah,
And
but this also feels like a Kim Jong Un type thing, where if he gets every single time he goes golfing, he gets a 18 a score or 18, like a hole in one for every single time, right? One of these things where it's kind of like this mythicism around her, like, oh, she's so good that she could just walk onto any stage at any time and kill it. I think that's an unrealistic and even unhealthy view of your skills and the world
certainly,
as a
I
whole.
agree. It's likely that, like, there's something else going on here with her, either her sense of self, or she might even have a narcissistic personality. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose. There's something else going on here. And if OP wants to, maybe, I don't even know how you would gently have that conversation,
Well,
I guess.
I guess it really depends. If she asks him, do you think I'm the best stand-up comedian ever? And he answers honestly, then I think that's certainly one thing. But he did kind of give unsolicited.
Yeah, she didn't ask him about it. She just said this thing, and then he shot her down.
So it's a really sticky situation. And I mean, I think it's bad all around, to be quite honest.
Certainly, but I mean, and if someone asks you directly, you don't have to. Like, if my mom were to ask me, like, don't you think I'm just the greatest mathematician to ever mathematics? I would be like, no, Mom, I don't think so. But, if she just wants to brag about her A on this stats assignment, then, like, sure, that's fine. It's not hurting anything. And I can't say anything that's going to change her mind. And if this woman has made up her mind that, she is the greatest stand-up comedian to ever walk this earth, then, maybe nothing OP says will actually, change it for her.
This is actually her villain origin story. Her boyfriend triggered the chain of events that lead her to become the comedian, Batman's greatest rival yet. She kills everyone with comedy.
He was so ugly that everyone died. The end. I don't know why that reminded me of it, Patrick, but
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks to Amber for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
If you did enjoy this video, consider giving me a like. If you disliked this video, consider giving me a dislike. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.